So, in the absence of, oh, what a lovely echo. Who's that? Hi. I just turned it on, but now I've got this super cool echo. Okay, cool. Is this better? Okay, I think I just needed to mute myself here in the council chamber. Can you all hear me downstairs?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. All right, we're gonna get started. All right. So I'm gonna call this meeting to order at 9:36 a.m. And I'm gonna do a roll call. So we've got, Katie is absent. Ellen Martin. Jeff Meacham. Judy Refuerzo.
Here.
Maria Ruiz. Great, we've got a quorum. Thank you all. And now we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, do we have any announcements from the commissioners? No, nobody's got any news? Okay. On to announcements from staff. So I spoke with each of you individually, and this is just for the record, at some point, probably our second or third meeting, we'll look into electing a chair and a vice chair for this commission once we kind of gel together as a group. But for the time being, I'll continue to keep us moving along on the agendas. And thank you all for being here. Welcome to our new members who haven't served on the commission before. I'm really excited to work with all of you. All right, now on to public appearances. This is for items that do not appear on our agenda. People are entitled to speak on things that are not on the agenda, and this is limited to 3 minutes. We have nobody here in the council chamber, and I do not see anybody on Zoom. Give them a second in case anybody wants to pop in, but nope. Okay, then we will move on from public appearances, and we're going to jump into first order of business, which is the adoption of meeting calendar for the rest of 2025. We do have a number of conflicts this year, which is interesting. We usually only have Car Week. I have included as an attachment with lots of colorful shapes when those conflicts are, and includes when our events are, holidays, and then the proposed alternate meeting dates. Our August meeting, which would be our next meeting, actually falls during Car Week, which is not a great time to have public meetings. A number of people go out of town, some people stay, it's just congested as heck. And so I propose that we cancel this meeting and hold a special meeting Tuesday, July 29th. I am amenable to moving that meeting. Hi, Katie. Right there between Judy and Maria. We're just on the first item discussing our meeting calendar. So for Katie's, it's okay. Benefit Tuesday, October 12th. Our next meeting falls during Car Week. My proposed alternate date is Tuesday, July 29th. If anybody has any alternate dates they want to propose that would work better, I know where it's hard with 5 people to accommodate everybody's schedules, but if there's no set there, we'll move on to the next date. Yes.
I guess I have to press this. Huh? The reason, my only question is, since the meeting was August 12th, why don't we move it to the Tuesday before that, which is August 4th, instead of going all the way to July, like 2 weeks before? So that we can, especially, for example, in my case, I'll be here for Car Week, so it's easy to be around in
So
August.
that we could do, it's up to the commission. If you want to do it the week before Car Week. For me, when I propose dates, like for instance, when you look at the November date, that's smack in the middle of prep for home crafters and after Veterans Day. So I did, for Leslie and I, try to balance those things out. And so in not proposing it for Tuesday, August 5th, it's because we're gearing up for Car Week, but it works. That can work for us too. If the preference is for Tuesday, October the 5th.
So it does work for your calendar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that the preference? Tuesday, October 5th? August 5th, excuse me.
Do we have a motion?
Well, let's go through the rest of the dates so we can
okay.
sub in Tuesday, August 5th instead of July 29th. Is everybody okay with the next date, which is the November the 18th, since our meeting falls on Veterans Day? And it's, like I said, right there and right before Thanksgiving, right in the middle of everything. Then that's what we shall do.
And I want to thank you, Ashley. We used to just cancel the meetings, and I think it's important that we have them, so thank you for rescheduling.
We're going to be having some good discussions, and I want to be able to keep our momentum going. And so if we're canceling meetings right and left, that's not going to help us get anywhere.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So November, I believe it was November 18th.
Yes.
I unfortunately will not be able to attend, but
There's going to be times, especially when we move meetings around, that's going to be the case. And hopefully for when we get into 2026, we'll have fewer conflicts. I imagine so. Not to worry, Jeff. Especially since that's right before Thanksgiving.
And Ashley, I guess the other question is, we can also attend via Zoom if we are, I mean, not in your case, I'm not suggesting.
So we just had Jeff and I just
no.
had a good conversation about that. So during the pandemic, we were doing our meetings by Zoom, all of us. And because the state changed their rules and regulations around the Brown Act and how we could participate in meetings, how the public could participate in meetings. Probably about 6 or 9 months ago, maybe a little longer than that, the state reverted back to pre-pandemic rules and laws. So what that means is that if a member of the voting body, so not me, not staff, or people presenting to us from outside agencies, but for all of you, if you want to participate remotely, that means that you would need to give Leslie and myself advance notice, provide us with the address of the place where you'll be participating from. That place needs to be accessible. So if you're at a hotel, you need to be downstairs in the conference room. Everything needs to, and we will publish that address on the agenda. So if there are members of the public that happen to be on vacation in the same place that you are and they want to attend the meeting and be there in the room with you, they're able to participate in the meeting. And so, yes, you can participate by Zoom, but it is more complicated now because we've reverted back to the old ways of doing things per the Brown Act. So something to be aware of, if you are unable to make a meeting. Any more discussion about the meeting dates?
That means like if you're at home.
That means if you're at home, you need to give, your house needs to be accessible. People need to be able to get their wheelchair, walker into your house, and we will put your home address on the agenda. And there have been instances in the past, I remember when I was clerk, where we did have like a council member who, Judy will remember, where we put their home address on there, on the agenda. So that is the case. If you are at home, yeah. And so for instance, what this means is if you're sick and you can't attend a meeting, and we've already noticed the agenda, and you can't be here in the council chamber, you can't participate in the meeting via Zoom. You could watch it if you want to and comment as a member of the public, but not as a commissioner, and you couldn't vote on anything. Okay? So, and that's kind of why we do the calendars, is so that you all have well advanced notice. And we'll do this exercise again in December for calendar year 2026. Per the municipal code, we meet the second Tuesday of every month at 9:30. So, and it's only in these instances like today where we know we have conflicts. We know we've got Car Week, and we know we've got a federal holiday that coincides with our meeting where we need to change things up. Again, and hopefully in 2026, we won't have any conflicts. It's not every year that Car Week falls on at the same time as our meetings. So with all of that discussion, any other questions or thoughts about the calendar before I look to somebody to make a motion to adopt our 2025 calendar with the August 5th special meeting date and the November 18th special meeting date?
I make a motion that we adopt the new dates for our meetings in August and November.
Thank you, Ellen. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Judy. And now roll call. Katie Ania,
Yes.
Ellen Martin,
Yes.
Jeff Meacham,
Yes.
Judy Refuerzo,
Yes.
Maria Ruiz.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Approved unanimously. All right, now on to our heady business. So, welcome back to some of you, and welcome to our newer members. Our next item is to discuss the relaunch of the Community Activities Commission. Okay. There we go. Okay. So let's talk about the commission itself to begin with. I included with my staff report, a synthesis of the history of the commission, where we've been, where we are now. So I won't reread this to you. I know you've all looked through it. The Community Activities Commission is unique amongst the commissions in that it has evolved over the many years of its existence to meet community needs. We have skewed more recreation at times, where we had things going on at Vista Lobos, and we're working more alongside the youth center in terms of activities like that. We've never formally had a recreation department, but certainly had more recreation types of things and classes going on. I don't know if some of you may remember when we had painting classes up at Vista Lobos, a couple of art classes, so that type of thing. We at one point added cultural onto our title, and we would help decide what kind of artwork went up in the Marjorie Evans Gallery at the Sunset Center. So that's been a part of our mission, to think about those types of things. More recently, our focus has been special events here in town. So events that the city staff have organized and put together, but also permitting for events that are organized by outside organizations or individuals. And that's Car Week events, that's challenged athletes, that's Carmel Art Festival, that's events that are on the beach, that's film permits for productions like HBO when they come in with Big Little Lies, or smaller things where it's, a still photo shoot for a catalog here in town. So it runs the gamut. So we have, restructured over the years depending on where we've been. And this is also, I want to make note of this too, is tied into what we have in terms of budget. So there have been a couple special events over time. One of them, like Breakfast with the Bunny, that's put on by Carmel Host Lions. That used to be a city event. City led that event. And in the 90s, due to budget cuts, that event was going to be eliminated completely, and the Carmel Lions took that on. So that has happened to us in the past with our budget being cut. We run a pretty tight ship with our budget now. Most of our events are pretty low dollar amount. I think that the tree lighting is the one that's the highest cost at this point, and that's for stage rentals and bigger types of things. But you have things like Memorial Day and Veterans Day that we partner with American Legion Post 512 on, and our costs there are printing the programs and the flowers that get laid at the wreaths. Otherwise, it's pretty low cost, so under $500 for an event of that caliber. So in 2014, the Community Activities Department became part, well, not part of the library, but the library director began managing it. It used to be a part of the Assistant City Administrator's position and was hosted out of the Public Works Department. The Community Activities Department oversees, as I mentioned, the permitting for special events, beach events, our city's special events, and then, of course, the weekly farmers market that we have and our third Thursday events. We always meet monthly, and in the most recent past, this commission has provided feedback on events. So most of our commissioners usually volunteer alongside of us at events if they're not actually, like, for instance, with the city birthday and Halloween parade, active participants and riding in the parade. If you're not doing that, then supporting us with that. And Ellen's continued to do that. Thank you, Ellen. In the absence of the commission. So helping us to hang ornaments in the park when we get ready to decorate for tree lighting, or being out with us in the north lot of Sunset Center in the dark at 4 o'clock in the morning to set up for home crafters. And the 1 year we got rained on with a monsoon. Then it was a sunny day, but 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning was awful. The commission is also, when needed, formed ad hoc committees. So when I first started as director, we had an ad hoc committee that worked hard on updating the municipal code with a new mission statement and new responsibilities, and cleaning up some of the language that was outdated, that had included responsibilities that were no longer ours, that had been given to other departments, just kind of the way things drift. The other thing we've done is to make recommendations to the city council on events or on special event policies. So for instance, if an event requests the serving of alcohol or erection of tents, that's in the municipal code that the city council has that authority. We would make a recommendation on their behalf that they approve the special event permit. The permits themselves are approved at the staff level. So myself, Leslie, we go through event permits with the event organizer, and then those are sent to the police department for their look over as well and sign off on those. Starting in 2018 and going through 2019, the Community Activities Commission worked on its first ever strategic plan, which was really exciting. I love a good strategic plan. I think it gives us direction for what we're doing. It helps with budgeting, so we know how to prioritize the funds that we're given or that we're requesting. With the last iteration of our strategic plan, things that we did were to hire a new farmers market manager. Our market had been kind of languishing, and that coincided right with the start of the pandemic. They came on board January of 2020. But I think they've done a bang-up job for us. The market has been completely revitalized since before that time. And Third Thursdays have been a great success, and are some of the things that they're doing, I think, harken back to the original committee that was formed to add in a farmer's market, which goes back to, 2012, Judy? Jason Burnett. Yeah, so that goes back, over 10 years, almost 15 years ago. And so there were it was the Carmel Artisan Food Experience guidelines that we had. And so we were fortunate to find a market manager who embraced some of those original ideals that group had come up with, and was able to enact them and make them very Carmel. The other thing we were able to do is to institute an online permitting system. So not just download a PDF and fill it out and then scan it back to us, but to actually fill out an online form and get it to us. Helps with our record keeping and with that back and forth with our event organizers. Continuing to work on our sustainable event practices. Is it perfect? No, because people are always perpetually confused about recycling versus, the 1, 2, and 5s for recycle bin. It's a lot. And then what's actually compostable, what goes into the food waste bin. And so that is a lot of educational things. At one point in time, back in 2014, 2015, we had Sustainable Carmel come and, actually stand by, when they still had a huge group, stand by the trash cans and direct people on where things should go. We don't have that these days, so we've tried to work on our signage around those, but it still remains a challenge. But compostable bags, when we, as city, are doing something with utensils, making sure that the containers, forks, all of those things are compostable. And then continuing to improve communications. So events are up in a timely fashion on our website with correct dates. As soon as we have them, there are a handful of events that we collaborate on. So sandcastle contest, that one always takes us a little while to get up on the website because it's coordinating with the architects, who are wonderful and lovely, but it's a busy month for them. It's a busy month for us. They do their annual home tours in the month of September, but we're also, because it's on the beach, at the mercy of the tides. So picking a time when that works. This year, I'll say, since we're talking about Sandcastle, we're switching it to Sunday to see if we can get participation from more families in the area. Saturdays seem to be a really busy day. We've scheduled it kind of floating Saturdays in September, but there's a fall festival out at All Saints. So we're gonna try a Sunday and see what happens this year. We have worked on getting ads in the Pinecone more frequently, so trying to do at least semi-annual or quarterly ads with all of our events happening. So, starting at the beginning of the year, a full page ad with every single event that we know the date for, so that people can put those things on their calendars. And then when we get to June, the next 6 months, September, what we have ahead of us for the 3 months. Nice and big and colorful, so the goal is that people cut out that page of the Pinecone and slap it on their fridge so they know when the fun is gonna be happening here in town. We also put all of our events in the city administrator's Friday letter. One of the things that the commission discussed previously at length with the strategic plan was social media and communications in general. The city now has a social media policy that's being rolled out very slowly, and that's coming from the city administrator's office for how that is used. For the time being, the Friday letter is our best tool for communication at this point in time, and has kind of become a de facto place thanks to Leslie Fenton, who's not here today. She puts that together every week. And everybody in the village knows to send her their things if there's something going on that they want included in the Friday letter, because it's got a pretty broad reach. I think we've got over 2,000 or 3,000 people subscribe to that newsletter, which is great for our little village. And I know that it gets forwarded on to other people because we get those requests of, hey, my friend's been sending me this, can you just add me directly to that list? Which we do. So that kind of became the de facto way that kind of strategic conversation was semi-accomplished, is that Friday letter with, here's the newsletter of everything happening in town. We also do have a page on the website now with all of our local community groups. So if you want to volunteer there, but also know what is happening in town, that is also included on the city's website, which is great. And then one thing I do want to say about improved communications, and I want to put this in your brains as something to think about, and that is with the larger conversations that we have around, visitors and people in town and parking, all of these things impact how people participate in our events and how they enjoy our events. There's a balance, I think, to communication where we don't go viral and aren't mobbed at our events, because then they're not fun. When you can't move around. And so I've skewed in terms of our communications on the lighter side, so kept it to Pinecone advertising. And if the weekly picks things up, we're on the K-Zoo calendar, but beyond that, we're not trying to reach global levels of come to the city birthday Halloween parade or come to the pumpkin roll. Because again, if the lines are so long and there's nowhere to park, people are just frustrated and it's not as much fun. So there's a balance, and I want us to think about that when we continue our conversations about communications.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Do we want to get through all the slides before we provide questions or other feedback?
That's a good question. Let's take a pause and let's go with questions.
And some of them may be more just general statements, being new to the commission, of course, but hearing all of the historical components and everything that you put together here. And you just hit on the very first one that I had on my list. I really wanted to understand, obviously, as we begin to understand our role going forward, as the commission is being brought back together, do we want to promote more and/or new events or activities within the city? And I think you've already suggested that while that might be the case, we don't want to go viral with them. So are we noticing any kind of historical downtrend in attendance to these events that has led to the concern and why we're being recommissioned?
So no, the answer to that is no. We haven't seen a downtrend in our attendance, our participation in our events, which is great. We've kind of stayed steady. A couple years ago, we were mobbed for tree lighting and nobody could figure out why. I just still don't know why that year, and I was bracing for it last year, and last year we had the normal amount of people that we typically see for that, so that it didn't feel so congested in town. So no, that hasn't been a challenge for us. Did I answer
My other
your
question
list?
was
Sorry.
just new events or activities.
So new events and activities, that's a good question. And of course, I've got tons of ideas. And actually, Katie, in her capacity as executive director at the chamber, and I've been talking about adding in one new event this year down on the beach. I would say our bigger challenge is balancing it out with the other events happening in town. So when I have event organizers come to me, it's like, okay, I want to do it in October. And it's like, okay, but because that's the best weather month. And it's like, well, everything is happening in October. Like maybe think of a different month. And it's a conversation we have. So you look at the calendar. So January through March, I wouldn't do an event because that's when we get our storms more frequently nowadays. And we're gonna have power outages and you're gonna end up canceling. After Easter, that's a time to start thinking about it and when things start picking up again. So it's just, especially with the scale of the events is another thing to think about. Are we doing something that closes down a block or two or bigger than that in town? And how much of that do we want happening on a regular basis when you go through and you look at all of the things happening? So, we've got Breakfast with the Bunny happening, and then you roll into May and it's the Carmel Art Festival. It's the Surf About down on the beach. We have Culinary Week now, which expanded so that there's a whole week of events happening, essentially. That got that bigger in June. Plus, you balance it out with outside things happening with graduation. So when I went to the culinary thing, and that's another thing that we look at too, is not just, okay, what are the city events that we have? What do we know are regular events? Are they coming back? Do they want to be at the same time? And usually they do. What other global things are happening? So when we plan things out, because our city events are family friendly, what school breaks are happening? When is it fall break? When is it winter break? When is it ski vacation? Because if we plan it out and we do it the weekend before, people are packing up to leave. And if we do it the weekend after that week, no one's going to show up because they won't be there. So, and then you factor that in with the smaller events. So there's a balance to things when we think about new events too. And the other thing I look to is partnering. who's doing something that's great that we can help support. And that's what I see a lot of my role as being, especially with things like with the expansion of Culinary Week. My job in a lot of meetings like that is to sit there and be like, I love that idea, but the rules are. It's a little bit of a bummer to make sure that we're within the regulations, or I love that, did you talk to the health department? Or make sure you get your ABC and we've got security gates up so that our events are safe. All the things that are happening in here are good. And so the other role that we can play, because keep in mind, it's half of me and half of Leslie, and hopefully some of the public works crew when we do it. So when we talk about executing events, there's so much that we physically and mentally can organize and do with the limited staff that we have. And so working to support other event organizers is really important and something that I take really seriously and I enjoy doing, because we have a lot of really smart people who come to town that want to do something in the spirit of Carmel that will be enjoyable for locals and for visitors that stumble across it, that want to make it part of their regular visiting. Like, we have people that come to visit and want to know in January when the sandcastle contest is. That is an important event for their family during the year. So very long-winded answer to your question, but it is complicated, and it is something that I consider on the regular for how we do events in Carmel.
I have a question, though. Just to, can we step back for a minute? Because I guess I'm a newcomer too, so, I mean, I know there's a lot of experience here, so my first thing was, let's look at what is our mission. I thought, because I was looking at it, and it keeps on talking about developing or having activities and basically neighborhood, family-oriented activities for the residents more than the tourists. I mean, it's kind of like, but at the same time, we want that balance because we have businesses, et cetera, right? So if I look at that, I guess back to your question was, do we have enough events, or do we need to be creating new events? And which events are like absolutely committed to, and then which ones are we maybe ought to be scrapped and create a new one? Or, you know, I mean, that's the way I'm seeing it, because I guess I was thinking about it, because I look at your strategy and I look at the budget, and I know how much money you have, because I was very involved with the budget discussions of this city this past number of months. So if you look at it, I feel like, okay, are we serving our population, number one? That will be my first question, you know what I mean? Are we meeting the needs?
Sure, I would then maybe even take it one more step back, and it was my next point here, which is, should we review and/or develop a new strategic plan?
I agree.
Yes, I love it.
100%.
Yes, I think
Right,
that
because the last update was in 21, I believe, or?
it was in 21, so our plan, the strategic plan, ran from 21 through 24. So we're exactly at that timing now, and we should be working on a new strategic plan. And so that's one of the things that I have listed. I'm going to skip ahead. So where do we go from here? What do we, and I put at the end of the staff report, I put a list, and they were numbered, but they weren't in any particular order for me. That's kind of the to-do list I've had swirling around in my mind around this exercise that we're undertaking with this commission. You know, reviewing the municipal code, so chapter 2.28 that governs us, that includes our mission statement there, that says what our roles and responsibilities are. And looking at our rules of procedure, I mean, those are just how we elect officers and things like that, but always good to review those things. Taking a look at our budget. So what is possible for us in terms of the funds that we have allocated to us? And there may not be much that we can enact this year because everything is earmarked, but we can certainly, I mean, we've got pretty much 3 months left this year, and January is when I start planning for the budget. So those discussions can happen then. Or we can already start thinking about factoring that in if we want to switch things up with events, request more money, whatever it is that we need. As Jeff and Maria said, look at our annual special events. Are people happy with those? And that's skipped down to third bullet over there. Let's ask the community. Let's develop a survey together, and let's send something out to the community and say, hey, are you happy? Here's our events. Rate each of one of these on a scale of 1 to, if you want to keep these, however we do it, whatever it is, let's ask them, you know, what are their thoughts and opinions about the city's special events and what's happening in town. Taking a look at not only our strategic priorities, but also the council's strategic priorities. So when we first did our strategic plan, the first one back in 2019, we grounded our goals. We used the city council's goals. So we took what kind of fit in with what our roles and responsibilities per the municipal code were, and we used their goals to build out some strategies and objectives for what we thought would be things that we were hearing from the community about our special events and work that we thought needed to be done with the community activities department. So taking a look at what has changed since then with the council's strategic priorities and thinking about how we fit in with an updated strategic plan. And then we do have one policy that's hanging out there, policy C-1601. This isn't the day to discuss that one. A lot of work went into it. It was very lengthy, and a lot of things have now been eliminated from it in terms of how the department operates and the commission operates. But I do have some ideas about how it can help to serve the department and the commission going forward. And then just kind of continuing on as we are working, discussing what's currently working with the department, with the commission, with our activities as we go along. And so this is what I was thinking, and I might, since we're about 40 minutes in now, and this is a lot for us to bite off and chew, but I was thinking, you know, stepping even further back than we've already stepped to discuss what the point of boards and commissions is. What are we here for? How are we helping the city council to do their work? In the larger scheme of things, we kind of talked about the role that we've played in the past, which is supporting recreation, supporting cultural, you know, kind of wherever the council's needed us, we're this utility player kind of commission in terms of the community needs and community needs that are hard to measure in terms of satisfaction, hard to measure in terms of impactfulness. So, you know, unless you hear people reach out directly and tell us, oh my gosh, this is so important to my family, or there's something that's going to be changed about everything, you know, you don't usually hear from people. And then, you know, what other roles do these types of commissions play in other cities? How are they functioning in other places? What does that look like? And then again, then taking a step forward and looking at council strategic plans, and then diving into our strategic plan, talking about our mission statement. So, and we can, you know, break this up even further tackle some of this in August. Does this sound like a plan for everybody to kind of get into this?
It does, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
Where can we get a copy of the slide deck?
I can send you a copy of the slide
Thank you,
deck.
appreciate it.
I'll send
Well,
that out.
in the meantime, Ashley, I guess my question would be, okay, next time we meet is August, right? I'm going to be more proactive and say, is there anything we can be doing in prep for Car Week, for example, or activities that are occurring? Is there any call of action that you say, okay, look, I could use help here, 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 so that we do that in the meantime as we prepare for the August meeting, so that we're not just waiting for the next meeting to discuss the strategic plan? That would be my thought. I mean, I don't know what everybody thinks, but.
No, absolutely. So I, especially as we talk, the next slide or two that I have, about what commissioners do. So twofold. One, I had thought about assigning homework because this is a lot. And the more that we all think about this in between the meeting, the more productive we're going to be when we show up at the meeting. And the more that we can work through everything. The quicker, not that we're in a race to do this, but once we get some of this more esoteric stuff nailed down, then we can get into the nitty-gritty of strategic planning and mission statements and things like that. The other piece of this is the more day-to-day operations in terms of events themselves. So we will, and we have done in the past, coming up on an event, send out a call to action for all of you saying, hey, We need, the next one I have coming up is sandcastle contest. So, hey, we need sandcastle judges. Who wants to come and be one of our marshals? Thank you, Ellen. Yeah. That's in September. I know you already have. Yeah. So we usually need two commissioners to come down and be judges for us. And if you want to come down and be a marshal and help me corral the judges and keep them moving along the beach, I would welcome that very much. It's lots of gentle shouting, if you can do that, to keep people moving. And then, we've got the pumpkin rolls, if you want to help us corral people at the top of the line. There's all kinds of things that we will be sending out emails that's helpful for all of you in discussions. When you see those things, not just as a participant, but an active volunteer to say, oh, I see why we're doing things this way and why this morphed over the years, because this, way we did it before, like we put the metal fencing up instead of plastic fencing at the pumpkin roll because the pumpkins were destroying plastic fencing and the metal holds up better. Little things like that. So when we discuss after actions at meetings, you can speak to those things. So any other questions about that?
I do have a couple of questions. The existing strategic plan, can you send us a copy of that as well?
Yes, that is, I'm pretty sure I included that in the agenda packet.
It was in the agenda packet?
Yeah,
Okay, perfect.
it's one of the attachments in the agenda packet. I included in the agenda packet as attachments the last set of slides from their March meeting that go through their priorities. They're still working on formatting. The last discussion they had about their strategic priorities was about formatting and didn't include the full plan. So the March meeting was the latest and greatest in terms of how they were organizing things. And then our strategic plan, our event schedule, the municipal code, all of that's there. And we'll go through, we'll take a overview of those things. So before the meeting started, I mentioned to some of you that I was reading a book, being the library director, I can't help myself. Boards That Make a Difference. It's been super helpful for me in terms of thinking about our role within the community, how boards work for either nonprofits or for-profit companies. And so I pulled some things out of there, and I'm going to caveat this with this first slide. Well, this is the commission side. We'll go back to that one. From Boards That Make a Difference, some things I want you to think about, and I don't think that they're all germane to how we were operating the CAC in the past, but some of them are, and they're things to think about in terms of how we operate. You all are here for a reason. You're incredibly smart people. You play great roles within your communities. You care about this place. So what are the issues that come up for boards that prohibit us from being effective in how we do things? So getting bogged down in the minutia, spending time on trivial things, building a strategic plan that's, like usually I do a 3-year strategic plan. You can go further out than that, but for us, but sticking with the day-to-day operations rather than keeping those long-range goals in mind and how that serves us. Being reactive, and I know that not being reactive can be challenging sometimes in this community because things come up for us. Natural events happen like storms and fires, and worrying about those that take up time and air, or things not so much have happened with events, but keeping in mind, what are our long range goals, and trying not to be reactive and keep that mindset of being proactive. That's why we develop strategic plans, is to be proactive. Reviewing, rehashing, redoing, keeping these same issues that just keep coming up again and again for us. And I think with the Community Activities Commission, we broke a lot of those cycles where we were bogged down in some policy stuff with Car Week that got us stuck spinning our wheels for a while. And we kind of broke out of that, and strategic planning was helpful for us. Figuring out and I appreciate you all asking, who's accountable for what, who's doing what on commissions. Talking about homework, and that's another thing that I think our council and commissions have been good about is forming ad hoc committees when we need to get work done. Asking for public input. Our public loves to give input in this village. We're so fortunate on that scale, or not for lack of that. When I was city clerk and I used to go to clerk conferences, one of the huge discussions that they would always have is how to get the public more engaged. And it would make me laugh because I'm like, we have standing room only at every single meeting. That is not our issue. So these are just things that I have in the back of my mind as I'm going through, one, reading this book, thinking about these discussions on where are our pitfalls, how can we avoid them, how can we make this commission as strong as possible as we undertake this work, and kind of don't just get settled into how we've always done it. That's not a bad thing, but we've got an opportunity here to kind of be imaginative with this commission at this point in time. So going back a couple slides, what kind of commission are we? We've been recreation, we've been cultural. Our latest iteration has been centered around special events. Are we happy there? Our neighbors up and down the coast into the Bay Area, this is just a short smattering. I made this just to kind of see how other commissions similar to us are operating. What are their roles and responsibilities? What are the expectations of them within their communities, and how are we different from that? The biggest thing that I saw across the board with these is that where we differ is the recreation piece of things and or the cultural arts piece of things. Mostly it's recreation. So we don't have a rec department here. We don't have a budget for a rec department. We don't have a community pool. We're 1 square mile. We're very small. So where does that put us, if anywhere? And we're Carmel, so we can do things our own unique way, and we don't need to have a recreation department in order to have a community activities commission, but just something to percolate in the back of your mind in terms of, compare and contrast, and to think about what our role is now and what our future role could be. Yes, sorry.
With the Forest and Beach.
Yeah, so Forest and Beach, the Forest and Beach Commission and Public Works Department, Forestry Department specifically within the Public Works Department, oversee forest, parks, and beach. That would be Forest Hill Park, the tennis courts, the beach, Devendorf Park, Piccadilly Park, all of those parks. And we have, it's in our municipal code, made recommendations about the best use of those spaces in the past and our recreation facilities, but we do not have oversight of those types of things. And that is probably, those courts are the closest we come to recreation at this point in
Then
time.
we have the basketball courts in the park over there, and, playground and.
Right. And that's something that we could definitely explore. I think I talked to several of you about the idea of, okay, so we are probably not going to have a full-on recreation department. What do we have? We're not going to have build recreation facilities. We've got aging infrastructure that we're struggling to build up now. But what is one of the greatest things that we do have? Our open spaces, our green spaces, our beach spaces, where people like to be doing physical activities. So is there a way for us to work with our yoga instructors or basketball camp people so that they get an in and about license, and we keep track of, schedules of things so that we can alert our community, hey, this is the schedule for spring, summer. If your kids want to sign up for this camp, this is when it's happening. Is there an alternate way for us to do quasi-recreation? So people have reasonable expectations, and our spaces are not regulated, but there's a balance between free and open time and, awareness in terms of communication of, hey, guess what? You can go down onto the beach and do yoga class at this time, and it's a community experience now. I don't know. Things that I've percolated over the years in my brain in terms of recreation, and especially with the pandemic, that came up more. So like, We kind of dabbled in it with the farmer's market, with the, I can't remember the name of the studio that used to be in Carmel Plaza, but they started doing a weekly, almost, or was it twice monthly yoga class during the farmer's market in the park. And then in between that, the bar class would come out sometimes and they would do a class. So there's opportunities there for recreation types of things. How do we make that work in Carmel?
One recommendation might be during the January and February months when there would be less opportunity for us to be competing with activities in the outdoor spaces. So you mentioned yoga and bar and those sorts of things that could be done indoors. Then it's just a matter of where. Can
Right.
accommodate, the community. And I had brought up, I think the other evening that, why aren't we using facilities like the Scout House? I've never been in the Scout House, so I can't tell you what state it's in, but
Yeah.
that might be a reason why.
So, yeah, and that's a good and question. We do have facilities that aren't being used and had previously been used for activities like that. Scout House is a perfect example of it. The challenge with Scout House, facilities like the Scout House and with the, say, Flanders Mansion, is that they aren't in a great state right now. They're holding, they're not deteriorating, but nothing's getting any better. And they're in a long queue of, again, deferred maintenance and infrastructure, not through fault of anybody, but just the ups and downs of budget over the years for city council. And so right now, head of the line is the police department, to keep operations going. And we're in, oh gosh, I don't think it's over 100 years, 75-year-old building sitting here right now, City Hall, that just got re-roofed. And it feels like an old building. It is an old building, and I would say that would probably jump the queue if anything happened ahead of Flanders and Scout House. And those two facilities come up in the community on the regular. There just aren't the funds there, and there isn't the agreement. There hasn't been to this point in time. Could we, as the commission, advocate for that and try to figure it out? We could. We absolutely could, and we have put recommendations on there. But it is something we need to consider within the larger context of what else is happening in the city and what the city's budget looks like in terms of those facilities to do things. So.
And I don't know that we want to compete with businesses in town, like a yoga thing or
No.
We'll permit them to use the park or permit them.
Right,
But
exactly.
we don't want to compete with businesses that already exist that are trying to make money.
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't mean to imply that we would, but if we could partner with them, again, back to your original point, what are others doing that maybe we can get behind and support?
Right.
And, help them. It's an opportunity for them to give back to the community, but also promote their business.
Yeah.
I just wondered if Vista Lobos, what's happening with that?
Vista Lobos has been converted for staff space, and that kind of came out of the pandemic. So Public Works offices, and then the Community Emergency Response Team, they deploy out of there and have their supplies up there. So largely staff use at this point. So yeah, so that's definitely a bigger discussion that we can have around recreation, quasi-recreation, and how it can work for the village.
I just didn't
Through
know if
this
it should
commission.
be put in with Forest and Beach since they already have the parks or if it was,
I don't know, maybe we could be creative and have like an ad hoc of one
Both?
member of Forest and Beach and one member of
Yeah.
Community Activities Commission that would work together. That could make recommendations to both and liaise, like, let's say, I'm gonna pick on you, Judy, since you brought this up, but say Judy's our liaison, come back and say, hey, I went to the Forest and Beach Commission and brought this up, and this was the response, and vice versa with that. So that could be an idea that we could pitch to ensure communication. I mean, because for Leslie and I, we communicate with Public Works on a regular basis for support for special events, but in particular forestry, so that we can let them know, hey, please don't turn the sprinklers on in
turn
Devendorf
'em
Park
off.
the day before Veterans Day so that we're not walking around in the mud. That kind of thing that they work with us on, so. So making that more of a standard practice for the commissions themselves.
So I don't know if it was included in the handbook or not, but do you provide us with the budget?
Yeah, that was included as an attachment
Okay.
in the agenda packet.
Okay. Because I would just be very interested in how much is put towards promotion and that kind of thing. I'm always hearing from people, well, I didn't know that was happening, and so knowing where we're advertising and promoting, I think is important, and then looking to see how effective it is, and if any of the events that the Activities Commission does put on, do we have banners on Ocean? Is that budgeted for any of that?
So we have $7,000 for advertising for this year. We've gone up and down on it over the years. We use that for mostly Pinecone advertising. And again, we send things out in the Friday letter. They go up on the city website. Visit Carmel picks them up. Chamber of Commerce picks them up. We put them out on the KZoo calendar, so peninsula-wide access. The weekly will pick them up for hot picks sometimes if we're lucky and include them in their calendar. So there's lots of ways where we actually have great advertising without paying anything for it. And again, those have been our trusty ones over the last few years that I think have been effective for getting the word out. The other thing that we have with Visit Carmel and also with the library social media is advertisements through there. So library and the Library Foundation and Visit Carmel all have social media and are putting our events out on social media. So it is getting out through Instagram and Facebook that we are holding events that can be then shared out. Is there a perfect way besides, this is one of my favorite little jokes that I've made, besides, because I hear that, I hear this myself, like, I didn't know this was happening, how come nobody told me? And so I want to sometimes take our old community activities van, mount one of those speakers to the top of it, and drive around with a little microphone going, hear ye, tomorrow is the pumpkin roll, be there or be square. But short of doing that, I'm not sure, having a town crier, how, I think we've got pretty good reach. And I think it's an impossible task to meet that I didn't know for every single person.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the things they say they didn't know, Ellen, are maybe not like, the Bach Festival isn't on here, but the Bach Festival is
Correct.
happening
Right.
now. So we're not advertising that, right, for them.
If the Bach Festival, no, if the Bach, so not on that. So that calendar, I would have to have an entire issue of the
I know you
pine
would.
cone.
I know.
If
So
we were going to include every single CRA lecture, library lecture, Bach Festival, I mean, every single gathering in town, ribbon cuttings. So that keeps to our regular, the calendar that you see in there is city events.
Right.
Plus events that we know are going to shut down city streets. Those are the ones that we know are our big, regularly occurring events that have been here for 10 years or longer that are going to shut down some part of town or be impactful that people are going to see visually in town and know. Bach Festival, if they send us, hey, come to this practice session or whatever, we put that in the Friday letter.
We posted it.
And we
I saw
post it for them.
Right.
And I think the chamber's doing the same thing. We're all in our way getting cross-promoting each other,
Right.
which I think is such a difference from the way things worked pre-pandemic, where we were kind of siloed and we
good.
worked really hard. This commission in particular came up with a whole liaison project where we assigned each of the commissioners to be a liaison to one or two community groups and to try to get entrance to their meetings, to try to encourage them to come to our meetings and share what was going on. And one of our members went on to become a member of the group she was the liaison to and is in the thick of it. So it was great. It actually was a good experiment that worked well. And then the pandemic with, more communications online just hit the gas pedal on something that we were already kind of conceiving of in terms of partnerships and cross-promoting and lifting each other up and not trying to duplicate everybody's efforts. I think that's the other thing is are there things that we could be doing for the community activities department? Like, we could be putting on yoga classes. I could hire, well, if the budget was no object, I could hire some yoga teachers and do that. But do I want to be in competition with our local businesses? Do I want to be in competition with, and I think about this more on the scale of library programs. There's all kinds of things that we do at the library, and one of the things I try to be aware of is not competing with the Carmel Foundation. Have you seen their program, their class schedule? We don't need to be the be-all, end-all, everything library, because we have so many great organizations that we can lift up and tell people, oh, hey, we don't do this, but you should walk down the street and go to the Carmel Foundation because they're great, or you should walk up the hill and check out the CYC because they have fun summer camps going on that get to the type of program you're asking about. So how do we continue to do that and do it well?
I personally think that's a very important point, Leslie, Ashley, to say who is doing what, so that we know what's not being repeated and what, so that we are not recreating somebody else's activity. I think that's very important. I agree with you with the Back Festival, but it's funny because, for example, I had this discussion with Ashley. I love the Carmel International Film Festival. Last year it started, and I thought it was awesome. This year they're doing it, and they're extending it for 3 days. But there's nothing being said anywhere. So I'm thinking like, how do people know? You know what I mean? I know it's in October.
Facebook.
You know what I mean? It's exactly some things like other media, right? So I agree. The one thing that I was going to ask you, in the budget, of course, you have the advertisement of 7,000, but you also have back to your question, the community promotions. And I know they expend, what's being proposed is $38,000, right? So it was increased significantly to what the actual ended up being for 2024, 2025, right? So what is in that? Because I think that also ties to your question. What is that money for, and do we have funding for other things, right?
Right. So, so the way that the account titles are structured, when we put the budget together every year, and when we took on the new financial system, about 10 or 12 years ago, we couldn't change these titles. So these were carryovers, and I said, well, community promotions sounds more like advertising to me. Right? But then we have an advertising budget, so what are we doing? Community promotions is actually our supply budget. So for instance, like contract services, that's things like hiring the stage for tree lighting, additional portable toilets for home crafters. It's kind of the not as much fun stuff. It's farmer's market. That's those types of things. Community promotions is, I need more rope for banners. Or I need supplies for tents, or the flowers for Memorial Day or Veterans Day, or hot dogs for the city birthday and Halloween parade and candy. It's those types of supplies is what falls into community promotions. So it's the things that we need to make the events happen, and equipment replacements.
So supplies versus advertising.
Right, equipment.
And equipment as well.
Right.
Could that help you pay? Or sometimes when you ask for help from the Public Works group, how does that, could that cover some of their expenses, or it cannot go that way? Or you use their own budget,
So we've worked over the years to balance that type of thing out. So for instance, we book portable toilets for Home Crafters Marketplace. I was going to say, we used to do it for 4th of July, but the Pops took that on. But there are extra portable restrooms and dumpsters that are put down on Scenic Avenue at the beach for 4th of July weekend, Memorial Day weekend, and Labor Day. Those used to come out of the community activities budget. And I said, but why? I know people are there and they're doing activities, and some of them might be in the community, but how come it's coming out of our budget? So that's something that I actually got put into the Public Works budget, because those are ostensibly there to support our facility infrastructure. That's a little bit different than what we're doing. So I have done a lot of cleanup over the years on that type of thing, and we used to spend more money replacing delineators and A-frames and cones and things like that, and I kind of pulled that out of our budget as well. We will the types of equipment, when I talk about equipment, I'm talking about tents. We use tents frequently, pop-up tents. And, you know, they've got a lifespan of 3-4 years if you're lucky. They get worn out pretty easily. I do our equipment replacements on a rotating basis. So every 3 years, do we need new folding tables, chairs for events? How are things in good shape? That type of thing. So that we're not, you'll never see a huge jump up in that line item budget because we do those things on a rotating basis. But yeah, I did a lot of cleanup of our budget and a lot of question asking for why. And in the end, it's all the same money. It's all the biggest same pool of money, and I want to be supportive of our other departments, especially when you consider, like this year in our budget, we have a new stage, which we use for farmers market. The stage we have is 20 or 30 years old. It's incredibly heavy. And hard to maneuver, and it's time for something that's more portable, and we depend on public works staff to deploy that. So that actually supports them, supporting us, and there's a whole circle of support. And, their staff time is invaluable to us, and that is a cost too for special events. If you think about, especially like our heavy lifting events like the pumpkin roll, that takes a whole fleet of public works. So there is a balance within our community activities budget when we talk about equipment replacements. To be cognizant of the other departments and the support they provide to us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes. Do you need to?
About 5.
Okay. So Jeff needs to, we've gone for a good hour at this point. We can cut off here. We can keep the discussion going a little bit more. The other thing I want to propose to the commission is that and I know you all are very busy, but we can have special meetings. If we want to meet every couple weeks, or if we want to do that, we can. I need 24 hours notice to get the agenda posted, but if we want to keep this discussion going and not have a month in advance, we can do that too, if we need, because it's a lot to cover. So,
I was just gonna say, it might be worth it in the beginning, as we get like rolling, to have a few special meetings, just so that we can get ourselves established.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Sounds good.
We had
I
weekly
agree.
meetings during the pandemic.
We did have weekly meetings during the pandemic because we were trying to
Weekly,
figure out,
online.
yeah, we did.
Online.
Online.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
When
could
we
do
were
every
all
other
at
week or
home.
something, yeah. Maybe we could do every other week
welcome the
and for now
meetings.
to increase the tempo, you know what I mean? If you want, we can do every other week now, like, I agree, I mean, I don't know if but at least to get going a lot, because there's a lot of like modeling, like
Right.
shaping that we have to do, and we're all, I mean, especially me being new, it's like, there's a lot of data, I have tons of questions and tons of ideas, but of course, I don't want to just kind of like roll over with everything. So it's like more like, how could we shape things? So it would be great if we can meet a couple more times, like every other week or something, if that works for everybody.
So, so what I will do is, I will send you all an email with the proposed date. Let's look at my calendar go. I can't do the 22nd. I could do the 15th. We don't have to stick to Tuesdays either. We can pick a different day of the week. Okay. I can't do Tuesday, but
Or can we move
the
it to?
22nd. But we could do the 15th.
I'm out of town,
You're out
I'm
of town.
overseas.
That's my actual move day.
Your actual
so, yeah, yeah.
Well, for this month, let's stick with the 29th. What I'll do is go home or not go home.
We don't have the 29,
Go back to
remember?
the office.
We don't have the
Yes.
29, because we
Oh, the
moved it to,
5th.
so maybe we do it the 29th, and then we do the other one on August 5th, so we'll do 2 consecutive ones.
Okay, then we'll do that.
Yeah, exactly, we won't forget.
In the meantime, what I'll do is send you all an email. And what would be helpful is the next things that we were gonna be going over are, in particular, looking at our mission statement. And getting into the council categories. So they call them categories, not goals, and there's all different ways you can structure strategic plans. It's, I think, just a matter of personal preference and taste for how you use the language of categories, goals, objectives, strategies, and what order you put them in. So we get to do that for ourselves. Take a look at the council categories, and that's attached to this staff report. And our strategic plan as well. And so what would be helpful is a stab at rewriting our mission statement based on, and I don't mean for permanent. I don't mean that rewriting it starting now is going to be what we end up with and we're going to adopt it next meeting. But just based on our preliminary discussion today, let's all take a stab at rewriting the mission statement and then take a look at our strategic goals, our strategies and objectives, and highlight things you think we should carry over, put question marks, and send all of that to me so I can put all of that together. And I'll send you an email with all of these things. And then we can hit the ground running with our discussion on the 29th.
And should we also, since what I'm trying to say is we haven't reviewed any of the things. Well, I mean, one of the important things we do in this commission is review what went good and what went bad and how we're going to. So
Yes.
June has passed us by and we haven't talked about June events. And then by the time we meet on the 29th, July will be almost over. So we should schedule some time to look at some of the past events we just had.
We should. And so I'll add that to the agenda for next meeting. We'll talk about Surf About, the Culinary Week. Those were our 2 June events. And then the 4th of July, which just happened. And then we didn't get to it today, but I did include a synopsis of Car Week, what's happening for Car Week, what our events are. So take a look there and we can discuss on July 29th. We'll be doing the Public Works, Community Activities, and Police Department do pre-op meetings for the really big events, and that's one of them. So we start meeting at this time of year for city events so we can say, hey, we need this help from the VIPs, the Volunteers and Police Services, for traffic control for this. So we're getting into that season, and we'll be having our first pre-op meeting with the Police Department and Public Works July the 15th. And then we'll have another one the week right before Car Week to discuss. So we'll carry that over to the next meeting. Any questions about homework or plan of action? And I'll share the slide deck out with all of you. No? With no
I think
questions?
it's great.
Thank you all
Yeah.
so much. This has been a productive discussion, and I look forward to a lot more.
Likewise, yeah, I'm very excited.
Thank you, Ashley.
All right.
Thank you, Ashley, for all your time. It's really been great.
And for all your prepping.
This is gonna, yeah, we're gonna have a good time. All right, with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 10:48.
Do you need a motion? No.
No, I don't need a motion.